Direct News TV. November 7, 2023. Israel-Hamas war live, humanitarian aid targeted amid Gaza bombardment. Palestinian Red Crescent says Israeli forces targeted the International Red Cross humanitarian aid convoy in Gaza City. Doctors Without Borders staff member killed in Gaza, MSF calls for action to stop bloodshed. Israel killing Palestinian children at unprecedented rate, according to rights group, Defense for Children International Palestine. Saudi Arabia will host summits of Arab, African and Islamic countries to discuss the Gaza conflict in coming days, its investment minister has said. Biden has asked Netanyahu for a pause in the fighting in Gaza, while Rashida Tlaib has said she will not be silenced, ahead of a planned vote to rebuke her in the U.S. House of Representatives. At least 10,328 Palestinians in Gaza killed in Israeli attacks since October 7. In Israel, the death toll over the same period stands at more than 1,400. G7 ministers discuss what happens after Israel's war on Gaza ends. Group of 7, G7, foreign ministers meeting for a two-day summit in Tokyo have discussed, day after, scenarios in the Gaza Strip once the war has ended, Reuters news agency reports. The subject of what happens after Israel's war on Gaza was brought up during a working dinner late on Tuesday night, meeting host Japan said in a statement, with the G7 ministers due to continue talks on Wednesday. The statement from Japan gave no details on the options being discussed regarding the bombarded Palestinian enclave where more than 10,000 people have been killed by Israeli forces in the past month, though the foreign ministers are expected to issue a joint statement referencing the Gaza crisis later on Wednesday. The G7 group of industrialist nations is made up of the UK, Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan and the US, with the European Union also participating. Saudi Arabia to host summits to discuss Gaza conflict. The Reuters news agency is reporting that Saudi Arabia will host summits of Arab, Islamic and African nations in coming days to discuss Israel's war on Gaza. We will see, this week, in the next few days, Saudi Arabia convening an emergency Arab summit in Riyadh, Saudi Investment Minister Khalid Al-Falih said at the Bloomberg New Economy Forum in Singapore. You will see Saudi Arabia convening an Africa-Saudi summit in Riyadh, and in a few days you will see Saudi Arabia convening an Islamic summit, he said. In the short term, the objective of bringing these three summits and other gatherings under the leadership of Saudi Arabia would be to drive towards peaceful resolution of the conflict. Series of Israeli raids underway in the occupied West Bank. A video posted by Al Jazeera Arabic on X showed Israeli forces launching another round of raids in the occupied West Bank. The video clip showed one of the operations in Qalqilia. Qalqilia, which has been among the frequent targets of raids in the Palestinian territory since Israeli forces launched retaliatory operations following the October 7 Hamas attack. Another Al Jazeera Arabic video also showed Israeli forces clashing with Palestinians at the Aqabat Jabba refugee camp west of the city of Jericho. According to the Palestinian Prisoners Society, at least 154 Palestinians have been killed and 2,150 others detained by Israeli forces in the occupied West Bank in the last month since the latest Israel-Hamas hostilities began a month ago. Watch. Countries cut diplomatic ties with Israel. South Africa and Chad have withdrawn their ambassadors from Israel, joining 7 other countries that have done the same in recent weeks. The diplomatic backlash is a setback for Israel, which had been making progress in recent years in establishing relations with nations that boycotted it for decades. Guests: Maliha Lodhi, former Pakistani ambassador to the United Kingdom, United States and United Nations. Jawad Anani, former Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister in Jordan. Keel Boga Mapuni, Professor of African Politics at the University of South Africa. Deaths, injuries rise as attacks continue in vicinity of Gaza hospitals. At least 15 people killed in an Israeli bombardment in Gaza's Al-Shujaa neighborhood have been taken to Al-Shifa Hospital, even as the vicinity of the medical facility came under intense bombardment early on Wednesday. The Palestinian news agency Wafa is also reporting that 13 bodies were taken to the Nasser and European hospitals following Israeli raids on Khan Yunis in the south of the Gaza Strip. The Indonesian hospital also continued to receive patients amid heavy air strikes nearby on Wednesday. On Tuesday night, 2 people killed following an Israeli bombing in the Jabalia refugee camp were taken to the Indonesian hospital in northern Gaza. Intense Israeli bombing also hit a home in the Nuseirat refugee camp in central Gaza, resulting in several deaths and injuries, according to Wafa. UK Labour MP resigns from party frontbench over leader's Gaza stance. The UK Labour Party's Imran Hussain, a member of Parliament and Shadow Minister for Employment Rights and Protections, has resigned from the party's frontbench over Labour leader Keir Starmer's position on Israel's war against Gaza. Over recent weeks, it has become clear that my view on the ongoing humanitarian catastrophe in Gaza differs substantially from the position you have adopted, Hussain said in his resignation letter to Starmer. Hussain noted that in an interview on October 11, the Labour leader appeared to endorse actions by the Israeli military in Gaza. Whilst I appreciate your subsequent statements to clarify your comments and the increased emphasis being placed on addressing the desperate situation in Gaza, and while we both want to end the bloodshed, I believe the party needs to go further and call for a ceasefire, Hussain wrote. Hussain said that Israel has the right to defend itself, but this can never become a right to deliberately violate international law on protecting civilians or to commit war crimes. Hussain ended his resignation letter stating that he would continue to work from Labour's backbench to press for a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and for a lasting resolution that will deliver peace for Israelis and Palestinians as part of a two-state solution. Ambulance attack should be investigated as possible war crime, HRW. An Israeli army strike on an ambulance outside Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza on November 3 should be investigated as a possible war crime, Human Rights Watch, HRW, has said. HRW, an international human rights organization, said in a statement released today that it has verified video footage and photographs taken shortly after the strike and interviewed a witness to the attack. It found the video and photographs show a woman on a stretcher in the ambulance and at least 21 dead or injured people in the area surrounding the ambulance, including 5 children. HRW added that it did not find evidence that the ambulance was being used for military purposes, a claim made by an Israeli army spokesperson in a video posted on X after the attack. The Palestine Red Crescent Society has said that a medic and ambulance driver were among the people injured in the strike. Israel-Palestine account for 38% of global protests, ACLED. The Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project has recorded 4,200 demonstrations around the world related to the conflict between Israel and Hamas and the former's attacks on Gaza between October 7 to 27. That accounts for 38% of all global protests during that period. 90% of the protests were held in support of Palestine. Nearly 1,400 took place in the Middle East and North Africa. On an individual country basis, the highest number of protests were held in the United States, followed by Yemen, Turkey, Iran and Morocco. Intense bombing, flares reported near Al-Shifa hospital. We are following up on reports from our Al Jazeera Arabic colleagues that the vicinity of Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital has been hit with intense bombardment and flares. Al-Shifa Hospital is the besieged enclave's largest medical facility and is also now home to tens of thousands of people sheltering from Israel's bombs. On Tuesday, Israeli forces also hit the solar panel system for the hospital, which is already on the brink of collapse due to a shortage of fuel, water and medicine. The area near Al-Shifa also saw particularly heavy strikes on Sunday. Israel has said that Hamas's headquarters sit underneath Al-Shifa, a claim that Palestinian authorities and humanitarian workers have denied, pointing out that the assertion puts the hospital at risk of a direct hit. Hospital staff have refused Israel's demands for Al-Shifa to be evacuated, saying that it would be impossible to move patients. Palestinian mission to UN blasts Israeli slaughter of Gaza's children. Israel has killed twice as many Palestinian children in the past month alone than all the Palestinian children killed in the occupied West Bank and Gaza since 1967, the State of Palestine's mission to the United Nations said on social media. At least 4,237 Palestinian children have been killed in Gaza since the Israeli military onslaught against the besieged enclave began on October 7, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. An additional 1,350 children are reported as missing and most are presumed dead under the rubble of destroyed buildings in Gaza. That combined death toll means that some 180 children are being killed each day in Gaza, according to child rights group Defense of Children International, Palestine. My name is Kingsley. Please like, share, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be the first to be notified whenever we post. You won't regret it.